Hey guys, I want to chat today about a particular topic that has been on my mind a lot the last couple days after having a conversation with one of my friends who is single. And it is that your desires must line up with God's desires when you're dating as a Christian. And oftentimes we can create all of these boxes and preferences that are actually hindering us. We are keeping these preferences and boxes in a box when really God has so much more for you. And so I want to chat a little bit about this because it's something that really affected me even before I was a Christian. Like, this would happen to me. And I actually think it has a term in the mental health field. And that term is, I believe, maladaptive daydreaming, I think. And was something that I used to do a lot, even when I was like very young, was constant daydreaming. And it's a way of escaping reality, really. But I did it in the dating world too. Even as a Christian, I did this too. So what it is you meet somebody and they tick off some of your boxes or preferences that you have. And then you create a story in your mind about this person, about who this person is. And then you have this concept of who you think this person is, and you've convinced yourself of who this person is when really you might not really even know them at all. And you might not even be dating or meeting each other or courting or anything. So this is how the enemy tricks you into thinking somebody is your person. One of the ways, when they're not your person at all, and God has something so much better for you. So you create who this person is in your mind, and then you start checking off even more of your preferences and boxes, and then you're like, oh, that must be the person for me, right? And then you start to daydream about your life together. What would your life look like together? Oh, well, they are into, I don't know, they're into music and I'm into music, and we can make music together, so that must be my person. Or they do missionary work and I'm into missionary work, so we could work for the Lord together and do missionary work together. Well, those are all, good intentions, right? Those are great intentions that you have. And they could even be really like positive preferences, but it doesn't mean that that's what God has for you. We don't know until we meet that person, and that person, that man, pursues you, specifically towards women, whether or not that is going to be your husband or not. If you just met somebody but they aren't pursuing you and they're not actually even in your life, but you've already created the story in your head, the only person that is going to get hurt is you. Because that person probably doesn't even know any of this. You know what I mean? So it's like not reality. Okay, so I used to do this even when I became a Christian. And even when someone was pursuing me, I still like created the story in my head that it must be him because he's a good Christian man, and like he checks off a lot of my boxes, and the boxes in my head that I've made up too. But that wasn't who God had for me. So we can easily be tricked. The enemy, I think, has a lot of fun with this, unfortunately. I hate to say that. So when I met my husband, none of this happened. I did not go into fantasy thinking at all. There was no creating who I think this person is in my mind. There was no creating some story about our life together. And I think it was because our relationship was tangible. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was tangible. He was pursuing me. I was interested. It was mutual. And I find that when the relationship is not mutual, that's when you can get into that daydreaming and fantasizing about something that's not actually reality. And so I just urge you to, when you're dating, to try to stay as grounded as you possibly can. And I want you to look at the facts. Is this person in my life, or do I just think they're attractive from afar? Are they even someone I'm even speaking with right now? And if they're not, move on. They're not in your life. And like I said, look at the facts. Are you guys, courting for marriage? If you're not, that's not your person, right? They're not even in your life. So this is advice that I wish I would have had when I was single. And it's kind of tough love, because it's like you convince yourself to the point where you honestly believe that a certain person is your husband or wife, and they're not. And then you get hurt and you feel rejection, but you caused it yourself, unfortunately, or the devil, was part of that. But I would suggest that when you're praying for your future spouse, that you would pray that your desires would line up with God's desires for you, because He knows you better than you know yourself. And He knows what you need, and He knows what you want, and He knows more than you do. And so you might have all these preferences and boxes, but that might not be what God has for you. And what He has for you is going to be better, trust me. It's going to be better than what you think you need and what you think you want. Yeah, and I'll just leave it at that. And I just pray that whoever sees this would hear this word and would really take heed and start to pray that your desires would line up with God's desires. Because, the Bible says, seek His kingdom and He'll give you the desires of your heart. But our heart is deceitful, and our human heart is deceitful, and we can be easily deceived by our feelings. And so if you pray that your heart would be in alignment with God's heart in His kingdom, then it'll be a lot easier to determine who is your spouse and who's not your spouse, if that makes sense. And just open your mind up a little bit, and be open to what God has for you instead of what you think you need.